Sometimes I wonder if home is just a collection of memories we carry. Because the house I walked into that day wasn't mine anymore. The walls had been stripped of Dad's photographs, replaced by abstract art in muted grays and beiges. Our worn leather couch, the one where Dad and I spent countless movie nights, was gone, replaced by some modern monstrosity that looked about as comfortable as a marble slab. I stood in the doorway, my weekend bag still clutched in my hand, trying to process what felt like walking into a stranger's house. The scent of unfamiliar potpourri burned my nostrils, erasing the lingering traces of Dad's favorite sandalwood incense that Mom had kept burning since he passed. "Harmony, you're early." Mom's voice carried from the kitchen, followed by the clatter of dishes and unfamiliar laughter. "Come meet everyone. Everyone." I'd only been gone for 2 days, visiting Grandpa Walter. I dragged myself toward the kitchen, each step feeling heavier than the last. The scene that greeted me made my stomach twist. Mom, wearing a silk blouse I'd never seen before, stood at the counter beside a tall man with salt and pepper hair. A teenage girl perched on one of our bar stools, tapping away at her phone. "Sweetheart, this is Gregory and his daughter Sophie." Mom's smile was too bright, too forced. "Gregory and I have been seeing each other for a while now, and well." She held up her left hand, where a diamond ring caught the light. The room started spinning. "A while," my voice came out sharper than I intended. "How long is a while exactly?" "6 months," Gregory answered, stepping forward with an extended hand. "Your mother's told us so much about you." I stared at his hand until he awkwardly withdrew it. 6 months. Dad had been gone for barely 8. "We wanted to surprise you with the renovations," Mom continued, either oblivious to or ignoring my reaction. "Sophie has wonderful taste. She helped pick out everything." Sophie finally looked up from her phone. "The old stuff was kind of depressing, no offense." "That old stuff was my dad's." The words came out like ice. "Harmony," Mom's tone carried a warning. "We need to move forward. It's what your father would have wanted." "Really? Did he tell you that before or after you started dating while he was dying?" "That's enough." Mom's face flushed. "Gregory and Sophie are moving in next week. I know this is a lot to process, but you need to adjust your attitude." I looked around the kitchen, at the new appliances, the fancy coffee maker that replaced Dad's beloved French press, the stranger and his daughter who had somehow colonized our space while I wasn't looking. "Where are Dad's things?" "We packed them away. The important stuff is in storage." "Storage?" My voice cracked. "Like he's just some old furniture you didn't want anymore." "Harmony Carter, you will not speak to me this way in front of our guests." "Our guests?" I laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "They're not guests, Mom. You've already given them everything, haven't you? Did you even wait until Dad was cold in his grave?" I turned and ran upstairs before she could respond, taking the steps 2 at a time. My room was the only space untouched by this invasion. But for how long? How long before that too was erased, redecorated, given to Sophie? I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called Grandpa Walter. "I can't stay here," I whispered when he answered. "Everything's different. She's different. Dad's just gone, like he never existed." "Come back," he said simply. "Your room here is always waiting." I started packing before he finished speaking, knowing this was just the beginning. Mom hadn't just redecorated our house, she'd declared war on Dad's memory. And I wasn't about to let her win. Grandpa Walter's guest room became my sanctuary over the next 2 weeks. Each morning, I'd wake up to the smell of coffee and bacon, so different from Mom's protein smoothies, and Sophie's endless chatter about her social media following. "Your mother called again," Walter said one morning, sliding a plate of eggs in front of me. His weathered hands trembled slightly, something I'd been noticing more lately. "Did she ask about me, or just complain that I'm ruining her perfect new family portrait?" "Harmony." His voice carried that gentle reproach that always made me feel like a child. "She wants you home." I stabbed at my eggs. "That's not home anymore. It's their show house now, with their fancy furniture and their The doorbell cut me off. Walter's eyebrows drew together. He rarely got visitors this early. When he opened the door, Gregory's voice carried into the kitchen, smooth as oil. "Walter, hope we're not interrupting breakfast." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, as Gregory and Mom walked in like they owned the place. Mom wore her real estate agent smile, the one that could charm anyone into buying a cardboard box. "We need to discuss some things as a family," she announced, pointedly ignoring my death glare. "Actually, I was just leaving for school." I stood, but Walter's hand on my shoulder kept me in place. "Sit down, Cricket," he said, using Dad's old nickname for me. "Let's hear them out." Gregory pulled out a chair, his expensive watch catching the morning light. "Walter, we've been thinking about your situation. Living alone in this big house can't be easy at your age." My stomach dropped. Walter's fingers tightened on my shoulder. "I manage just fine," he said quietly. "Of course you do," Mom jumped in. "But Gregory has experience in elder care management. We've been looking at some wonderful assisted living communities." "Like hell you have," the words exploded out of me. "This is about the house, isn't it? You want to move him out so you can move in." "Harmony," Mom's smile cracked. "This is about what's best for everyone. The school district here is excellent for Sophie." "There it is," I laughed bitterly. "Everything's about Sophie now, isn't it? Dad's barely gone, and you're already planning to kick his father out of his own home." "That's not fair," Gregory interjected. "We're trying to help. Walter, the proceeds from selling this place could set you up comfortably." "I'm not selling." Walter's voice was steel. "Mason grew up in this house. Harmony practically lived here every summer. This isn't just property to be flipped." "Be reasonable," Mom pressed. "You can't manage alone forever. And with Harmony going to college soon." I caught the flash in Gregory's eyes at the mention of college. Something about it made my skin crawl. "Actually," I said slowly, "I've been thinking about taking a gap year. Stay here with Grandpa." Mom's face went white. "Absolutely not. We've discussed this. You're going to community college while living at home." "No, you discussed it, just like you discussed redecorating and getting engaged and erasing Dad from our lives. Your father would want us to move forward." Mom's composure finally cracked. "He wouldn't want us living in the past." "How would you know what he'd want? You were too busy planning your new life while he was dying." The silence that followed was deafening. Gregory cleared his throat, reaching for Mom's hand. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion another time. Perhaps you shouldn't continue it at all." Walter stood, suddenly looking every bit his 72 years. "This is my home, Lydia. It will remain my home. And Harmony is welcome here as long as she needs." They left shortly after, Mom's heels clicking angrily on the sidewalk. I watched through the window as Gregory helped her into his luxury car, his hand lingering possessively on her back. "You okay, Cricket?" Walter asked. "No." I turned to face him. "They're not going to stop, are they?" "Probably not." He smiled sadly. "But neither are we." I hugged him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave, wondering how much time we had before they tried again. Because they would try again. I could see it in Gregory's calculating eyes. This was just the opening move in a game I was only beginning to understand. The bank statement sat on my laptop screen like a bomb waiting to detonate. I'd only logged into Dad's old account out of habit. He'd always insisted I learn about managing money early, but the numbers didn't make sense. The college fund he'd set up for me, the one that had held over $50,000 when he died, now showed a balance of $1,200. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transaction history. A series of transfers had drained the account over the past 3 months, each one authorized by Mom as the surviving account holder. The front door slammed downstairs at Walter's house, followed by his muffled greeting. Mom's voice carried up the stairs. She'd been showing up unannounced lately, probably hoping to wear down his resistance about selling. I grabbed my phone and snapped photos of the transaction records before closing the laptop. By the time I reached the kitchen, Mom was arranging grocery bags on the counter while Walter watched with barely concealed annoyance. Sophie's private school application was accepted, Mom announced, not even looking at me. We're all so excited. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Is that what you needed Dad's money for? She froze, just for a second, before continuing to unpack organic vegetables. I don't know what you're talking about. The college fund. My college fund. The one Dad saved for 10 years to build. I held up my phone, showing the transaction history. $50,000, Mom, gone in 3 months. Walter straightened in his chair. Lydia, tell me you didn't. It's more complicated than that. She finally turned to face us, her expression hardening. Gregory and I agreed that Sophie's education. Gregory? I laughed, the sound raw in my throat. Dad worked overtime for years to save that money. He skipped vacations, drove that old car, all so I could go to college. And you gave it to Gregory's daughter. Sophie deserves the same opportunities. Then let Gregory pay for them. The words exploded out of me. That money was Dad's last gift to me, and you stole it. I did not steal anything. Mom's voice turned sharp. I am still your mother, and I made a decision that benefits this entire family. We're not a family anymore, my voice cracked. We're just extras in the Gregory and Sophie show. That's enough. She slammed a hand on the counter. I've tried to be patient, but this attitude has to stop. You're coming home today. No more hiding at Walter's. Like hell she is. Walter stood, his voice quiet but firm. You've gone too far, Lydia. Stay out of this, Dad. Mom's eyes flashed. This is between me and my daughter. Your daughter. I stepped closer, trembling with rage. The one you betrayed, or the one you bought with my future. I did what I had to do to secure our future, all of our futures. She grabbed her purse. Gregory has connections. Sophie's education will benefit everyone in this family. Gregory isn't family, I shouted. And that money wasn't yours to give away. Well, it's done now. She headed for the door, then paused. When you're ready to be reasonable, we can discuss community college options. Gregory knows some excellent programs. Get out. The words came out, barely above a whisper. She blinked. Excuse me. Get out. I grabbed one of the grocery bags and hurled it at the door. Apples scattered across the floor like dropped grenades. Get out of this house. Get out of my life. Go play perfect family with Gregory and Sophie and leave me alone. Mom stared at me for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she straightened her shoulders and walked out, stepping over the scattered produce without another word. The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. Walter's hand found my shoulder, steady despite his tremors. We'll figure something out, Cricket, he said softly. I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead. Dad had taught me about more than just bank accounts. He'd taught me about justice, about standing up for what's right. And somewhere in the mess Mom and Gregory had made of our lives, there had to be a way to make things right. I just had to find it. The first sign something was wrong came when Walter couldn't remember where he'd put his coffee cup. 3 times in one morning, he'd make a fresh cup, set it down somewhere, then start the process all over again. I found them later, one in the bathroom, one on the bookshelf, one growing cold by the washing machine. Just a foggy morning, he insisted. But his hands shook more than usual as he tried to sign some paperwork I'd brought home from school. I was researching local colleges on my laptop when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Gregory's number. Walter declined the call, but his expression darkened. They've been persistent, he said, rubbing his temples. Calling about the house almost daily now. Why didn't you tell me? You've got enough to worry about. He attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Besides, I can handle Gregory Benson. His phone buzzed again. A text this time. Walter squinted at the screen, then handed it to me. Must have hit something wrong. The letters are all jumbled. My stomach clenched as I looked at the perfectly clear message. Final offer stands until Friday. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The letters look fine, Grandpa. He stared at me for a long moment, then slowly sat down. Ah, that single syllable carried the weight of everything we weren't saying. I reached for his hand, noting how cold his fingers felt. Have you seen Dr. Matthews lately? Last week, he withdrew his hand, suddenly fascinated by a loose thread on his sweater. There are some concerns. Nothing definitive yet. The doorbell interrupted us. Through the window, I spotted Mom's car in the driveway. Perfect timing, Walter muttered, heading for the door. Mom burst in before he could reach it, waving a stack of papers. Dad, you need to look at these projections. The market won't stay this high forever, and the offer Gregory's group is making is not up for discussion. Walter's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. You're being unreasonable. She spread the papers across the coffee table. These retirement communities have everything you need: medical care, social activities. What he needs is for you to back off, I snapped. Mom's eyes narrowed. Stay out of this, Harmony. This is about your grandfather's future. No, it's about Gregory wanting this house. Don't pretend it's anything else. Gregory's investment group sees potential here, yes, but this is about taking care of family, like you took care of my college fund? Walter swayed slightly, grabbing the wall for support. Neither of us noticed at first, too caught up in our argument. That money is being put to good use, Mom insisted. Sophie's future. A loud thud cut her off. Walter had slumped against the wall, his face ashen. Grandpa, I reached him first, helping him to the couch. Mom, get some water. She hesitated, then hurried to the kitchen. Walter squeezed my hand, his grip weaker than this morning. I'm fine, he whispered. Just dizzy. Mom returned with the water, hovering uncertainly. Dad, this is exactly why you need more support. Professional care. What I need, Walter interrupted, his voice stronger, is for you to stop trying to profit from my illness. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's face went blank. That perfect real estate agent mask sliding into place. I don't know what you mean. Gregory's been calling doctors' offices, I said quietly, asking about Grandpa's condition. How did he even know which doctors to call? Mom, she flushed. He's concerned about family. He's concerned about getting this house before the market drops. Walter struggled to sit up straighter. I may be sick, Lydia, but I'm not stupid. Mom gathered her papers with shaking hands. We'll discuss this when you're feeling more reasonable. After she left, I helped Walter upstairs to rest. Standing in his doorway, watching him settle into bed, I felt something inside me harden into resolve. We need to talk to a lawyer, I said. Tomorrow. He nodded, already drifting off. Your father would be proud of you, Cricket. I closed his door quietly, then went downstairs to start making calls. Mom and Gregory wanted a war over legacies. Fine, they'd get one. The lawyer's office felt too warm, despite the spring chill outside. I watched Walter's hands shake as he signed another document, each tremor a reminder of how much worse he'd gotten in just 2 weeks. This power of attorney ensures Harmony can make medical decisions if you become incapacitated, the lawyer explained, sliding another form across the desk. But there's something else we should discuss. Walter nodded, reaching for his water glass. Your daughter's fiancé has been making inquiries about involuntary conservatorship. The glass slipped from Walter's hand, water spreading across the mahogany desk like spilled secrets. On what grounds? I demanded, already knowing the answer. They're building a case around his cognitive decline. The lawyer's expression remained neutral. Your mother would be appointed as conservator, giving her control over his medical care and assets. Walter's laugh was bitter, including the house. Precisely. The lawyer leaned forward. Mr. Carter, I strongly recommend we file a counter petition immediately. With your current diagnosis, my phone buzzed, a text from Sophie, of all people. Mom says to check your email, important about graduation. The email loaded slowly, each word hitting like a punch. Due to your extended absences, your graduation status is under review. They're trying to stop me from graduating. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. Mom's on the school board. She's using that to force you home, Walter finished. Where they can control you too. The lawyer cleared his throat. There's one other option, but it's rather extreme. We listened as he outlined the plan. With each detail, I felt something inside me harden, like metal being forged. Do it, Walter said before I could speak. All of it. The drive home was silent until Walter suddenly said, "Stop at the house. Grandpa, you should rest. Please, Cricket." I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, now unrecognizable with its new landscaping and modern fixtures. Mom's car wasn't there, but Gregory's was. "Wait here," Walter said, using his spare key to enter. Through the window, I watched him move slowly through the living room, touching things. The wall where Dad's photos used to hang. The spot where our old couch had been. Gregory appeared from his home office, surprise turning to calculation on his face. Their conversation was muffled, but Gregory's posture grew increasingly tense. Walter's voice, raised just enough for me to catch, "Think I don't know what you did to your last wife's father?" Gregory took a step back, face draining of color. Walter emerged minutes later, looking exhausted but satisfied. "Take me home, Cricket." "What did you say to him?" "Just reminded him that old men often have interesting friends and good memories." He closed his eyes. "Your father wasn't the only one who knew how to plan ahead." That night, I couldn't sleep. The lawyer's words kept spinning through my head, mixing with memories. Dad teaching me to stand up for myself. Mom erasing him from our lives. Gregory's smug smile as he claimed our spaces one by one. My phone lit up with Mom's name. "This rebellion needs to end. Come home tomorrow, or there will be consequences." I typed back, "You're right, there will be." The next morning, Walter had another episode. Worse than before. As the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance, he gripped my hand. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "remember what your father always said about chess." I squeezed his hand, remembering Dad's lessons at the kitchen table. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. Mom and Gregory arrived at the hospital minutes after us, all concerned faces and calculated sympathy. They didn't notice me slipping away to meet the lawyer in the parking lot, or see me signing the papers that would change everything. They wanted to play games with people's lives, fine. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I'd learned strategy from the best, and unlike them, I had nothing left to lose. Let the real game begin. The hospital chapel smelled like artificial flowers and broken promises. I sat in the back row, staring at the notification on my phone. Time of death, 3:47 a.m. 3 hours ago. Walter had slipped away while I was getting coffee, while Mom was handling paperwork, while Gregory was probably already calling his real estate contacts. The door creaked open. "There you are," Mom's voice, trying for sympathy, but landing somewhere near impatience. "We need to discuss arrangements." "Already?" My voice cracked. "He's barely cold." "Harmony." She sat beside me, smoothing her skirt. "There are practical matters. Like selling his house, moving his things, erasing him like you erased Dad? That's not fair." She reached for my hand. I pulled away. "The house needs to be handled before." "Before what?" I stood, fury rising like bile. "Before I can stop you from stealing that too?" Her expression hardened. "The will reading is tomorrow. Gregory's lawyer thinks." I laughed, the sound echoing off chapel walls. "Of course he does. Did you know Walter visited Gregory last week? Had quite an interesting conversation about Gregory's past." Mom's face went still. "What are you talking about?" "Ask your fiancé about his previous marriage, about what happened to his father-in-law's estate." She left without another word. I waited until her footsteps faded before pulling out the envelope Walter had given me last week. Inside was a key and an address for a safety deposit box. The bank opened at 9. I sat in the parking lot, watching the sun rise over buildings that felt too permanent, too unchanged by Walter's absence. The safety deposit box contained another envelope, this one in Dad's handwriting. for cricket when the storm hits. My hands shook as I read his letter. With each word, the pieces clicked together. Dad's suspicious questions about Gregory years ago, Walter's careful planning, the trail of financial records that would destroy Gregory's reputation and business. But the final paragraph stopped my breath. Remember, sweetheart, revenge is like poison. It might hurt your enemy, but it burns you first. Whatever you choose, choose it for yourself, not against them. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Mom's crying. Greg's yelling. What did you do? Before I could respond, another message came through. From Gregory. Meeting. Now. Your grandfather's house. Come alone, or the evidence about his cognitive state goes public. I drove to Walter's house in a daze, Dad's letter burning a hole in my pocket. Gregory's car was already there, parked crooked in his haste. He stood in the living room, holding a manila envelope. Your grandfather was quite the detective. Runs in the family. This ends now. He waved the envelope. You back off, let the house sale proceed normally. And these records stay buried. Otherwise what? I pulled out my own envelope. You'll destroy Walter's reputation. Funny thing about dead men, they're beyond caring. But your investors might care about these. His face twisted. You're just like your father, too righteous to see reality. Your mother needs this sale. Sophie's school, our future. Don't. The word came out like a whip crack. Don't pretend this is about them. Walter told me everything about your last wife's father, how you manipulated the conservatorship, sold his property, left him in a state facility to die. Gregory moved faster than I expected. The envelope tore from my grasp, papers scattering like dead leaves. His fingers dug into my arm. You have no idea what you're dealing with, little girl. Actually, a new voice said, I think she does. We both turned. Mom stood in the doorway, phone recording everything. Behind her, a man in a suit watched with professional interest. Detective, Mom said quietly, I believe this is what you needed to see. Gregory's grip went slack. As the detective read him his rights, Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. She didn't need to. We both knew this victory tasted like ashes. I picked up Dad's scattered letter, his words blurring through my tears. Remember, revenge burns you first. He was right. I'd won. But at what cost? In destroying Gregory, I'd also destroyed whatever was left of my family. The question was, where do you go when winning feels exactly like losing? The reading of Walter's will felt like a funeral all over again, but with sharks circling instead of mourners. Mom sat rigid beside her lawyer, while Sophie huddled in the corner, phone forgotten for once. Gregory's absence hung in the air like smoke. Before we proceed, Walter's lawyer began. There's a video Mr. Carter requested we watch. The screen flickered to life, showing Walter in his study, looking stronger than his final days. If you're watching this, he said, I'm gone. And knowing my daughter and her fiancé, they're ready to pounce. Mom flinched, but Mason and I learned something watching Gregory destroy his last family. Patience is everything. Walter's eyes seemed to meet mine through the screen. So we waited, we watched, and we planned. The lawyer paused the video, distributing thick folders, financial records, property deeds, and evidence of Mr. Benson's previous activities. Mom's hand shook as she opened her folder. This can't be real. Oh, it's real. I pulled out Dad's letter. Dad started investigating Gregory years ago. When he first tried to buy into Dad's business, he found everything. The fraud, the elder abuse, the hidden accounts. Why didn't he say anything? Mom's voice cracked. Because you wouldn't have believed him. Just like you didn't believe me about the college fund, or about Gregory using you to get to Walter's property. The video resumed. Walter's voice filled the room. So here's what's going to happen. The house goes to Harmony, along with my estate, but there's a condition. I straightened, hearing this for the first time. She has to offer her mother a choice. Walter's eyes twinkled. Lydia, you can keep everything Gregory promised you, the lifestyle, the status, his empty words. Or you can have your daughter back. But you can't have both. Mom's lawyer leaned forward. This stipulation isn't legally binding. No, Mom cut him off. It's not about legality. Sophie stood suddenly. I should go. This is family stuff. Sophie, wait. I caught her arm. You're as much a victim here as anyone. Stay. The lawyer cleared his throat. There's more. Mr. Carter set up a trust for both Harmony and Sophie's education, separate from any other assets. Sophie sank back down, tears streaming silently. He what? Mom whispered. Because that's what family actually does, I said. They protect each other. They don't steal from their children or use them as pawns. I never meant. Mom's composure cracked. Everything I did, I thought I was building something better, something stable. By erasing Dad, by throwing away everything he worked for, by surviving. She stood, mascara running. Do you know how terrified I was? Alone with a teenager, no career of my own. Gregory offered security, a future. I wanted to feel safe. And I wanted my mother. The words came out raw. I wanted the mom who used to make Sunday pancakes and laugh at Dad's terrible jokes. The one who taught me to be strong, not the one who threw away her daughter for a con man's promises. Mom moved toward me, then stopped, uncertain. Is it too late? I thought about Dad's letter, about Walter's final lessons in strategy and sacrifice, about the difference between winning and healing. That depends, I said quietly. Are you ready to choose? She looked around the room, at the evidence of Gregory's deception, at Sophie's tears, at the paused image of Walter on the screen. Then she reached for her engagement ring. I should have chosen you from the beginning. The ring clattered on the table. I'm so sorry, Harmony. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But as Sophie came to hug her mother, as the lawyer continued reading Walter's carefully crafted provisions, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, exactly, but possibility. Dad's letter had warned me about the cost of revenge. But maybe Walter's final move wasn't about revenge at all. Maybe it was about giving us all a chance to choose differently. I touched the ring on the table, this symbol of everything that had gone wrong. We've got a lot to figure out. Mom nodded, tears falling freely now. We do, but this time, I choose my daughter. The last box from Walter's study sat unopened on my new dorm room desk. Mom hovered in the doorway, uncertain whether to step in or stay back. We'd been doing this dance for weeks now, testing boundaries, rebuilding trust, one careful moment at a time. Sophie's settling into her new school, she said. The trust fund, it means everything to her. I nodded, running my fingers over the box's worn edges. Walter knew what he was doing, for all of us. He did. She stepped inside, touching a framed photo of Dad and Walter I'd hung on the wall. I found something at the house yesterday, in the attic. She pulled out an envelope, Dad's handwriting visible through the worn paper. It's addressed to both of us. I haven't opened it. My hands shook as I broke the seal. Inside was a single chess piece, a queen, and a note. Remember, the queen protects her family, but she's strongest when she knows which battles matter. Love, Mason. Mom's breath caught. He knew. About Gregory. About everything. He was trying to warn me. No, I said, studying the chess piece. He was teaching us both. Like that last game we played, when he let me win by sacrificing his queen to save his king. I don't understand. Sometimes winning isn't about destroying your opponent. It's about protecting what matters, even if it costs you something. I opened Walter's box, revealing stacks of photos, Mom and Dad's wedding, my childhood birthdays, family vacations, moments Gregory had tried to erase, preserved by two men who'd understood the long game better than I had. I've been thinking about Walter's house, I said quietly. It's too big for just visits during breaks. Mom stiffened. You're not dropping out. No, but maybe you and Sophie could live there. Keep it in the family. Harmony. She touched the chess piece. That house is your inheritance, and family is my legacy. That's what Dad and Walter were trying to tell us. I pulled out a photo. Mom teaching me to ride a bike. Dad catching me as I fell. Gregory almost won by making us forget that. She sat on my bed, tears falling. I don't deserve this chance. Maybe not. But Dad thought we both deserved to learn from his last lesson. I held out the queen. Besides, someone needs to help Sophie navigate senior year. And I hear her new guardian knows something about fresh starts. Mom laughed through her tears. When did you get so wise? I had good teachers. I placed the chess piece on my desk, next to the photo of Dad and Walter, even if it took me a while to understand their lessons. A knock at the door made us turn. Sophie stood there, holding a familiar French press coffee maker. Found this in storage, she said hesitantly. Thought maybe your dad would want it to have a home here. I felt something shift, like the final piece of a puzzle, clicking into place. Not perfect, not completely healed, but possible, real. Come in, I said. I'll teach you how to use it. Dad had a whole ritual. Said coffee was just an excuse for family to slow down and talk. As Sophie set up the coffee maker, as Mom shared stories about Dad's terrible coffee puns, I thought about Walter's final gift, not the money or the house, but this moment. 3 broken people learning to be family again, differently, but maybe better. The Queen stood guard on my desk, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the game, but in changing how you play it. Dad and Walter had known that all along. They'd given us the pieces. We just had to figure out how to use them. I opened my window, letting in the autumn air, somewhere between revenge and forgiveness, between holding on and letting go. We'd found our way home. Different home, different family, but ours all the same. The coffee maker gurgled, filling the room with the scent of memories and possibilities. We had a lot to learn, a lot to rebuild, but for now this was enough. 3 cups of coffee, 2 generations of lessons, and one family finding its way back together.